we should go ahead and get started. Are you ready, Linda?
I am ready. I
Okay.
am ready.
Terrific. Hi, everybody. I want to welcome you to Monona Terrace's Wright Design Series Zoom edition. It's a beautiful fall day here in Madison, Wisconsin, and we hope you're having a wonderful weather and a good day wherever you are joining us from. My name is Heather Sabin. I'm program coordinator at Monona Terrace, and we continue with our virtual series here as long as the foreseeable future at this point. So we are pleased to continue to do this on a monthly basis and happy to see you. Our presenter, Linda Eales, today is happy to take a few minutes of questions following her presentation. So I would just remind you to use the Q&A button to communicate with us. We don't use chat for this program, but please go ahead and type comments, questions in Q&A whenever you like. We will wait until the end of the presentation to take those questions. We'll do our best to get as many as we can. If we don't get to everything and you have something burning that you'd like addressed, you can use a follow-up email that will come to you tomorrow to respond to me and let me know what your question is. Our lecture is being recorded today, and so I'd like to remind you, and if you have a friend who couldn't make it or you can't attend all of this today and would like to go back to it, you can go to mononaterrace.com/webinars, and there you'll see the virtual library with our past lectures. It usually takes a few days to set that up, so check back at the end of the week and you should find it there. So now I'm very pleased to welcome our speaker, Linda Eales. She is the curator of the John E. Christian House, Samara, in West Lafayette, Indiana. She has held this position since December 2007. Beginning in 2002, Linda was volunteering as an interpreter at Samara under the direction of Dr. Christian, an original client and owner of the home. She served as the coordinator with Dr. Christian for the 50th anniversary celebration in 2005-06. And she's responsible for all aspects of the house: exhibitions, collections, scheduling and coordinating tours for 2,000 to 3,000 people who visit the home every year. And she worked with our friend Scott Perkins, Director of Preservation at Falling Water, to prepare a successful historic landmark nomination. Linda holds a Bachelor of Arts in Philosophy from the University of Illinois Champaign, and she studied art history and architecture, which contributed much to her education. When she's not working, she loves to read, travel, and learn. Learning virtually, probably right now.
Yes, absolutely.
So thank you so much for being with us, Linda. I'll pass it on to you.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Hi, everybody. As you heard, I am the curator at the John E. Christian House in West Lafayette. My boss was Dr. John Christian. He lived in the home until he passed away in 2015 on his 98th birthday. It's a pretty special guy, definitely. This is a photograph of Frank Lloyd Wright, about 1947. As you can see, Wright was born in 1867, and he died in 1959. So I always like to think of his lifetime as having gone from buggies to spaceships. So 1867, 2 years after the American Civil War, 1959, 2 years after Sputnik. You can see that, right? He was born in Richland Center, Wisconsin. His family moved around a lot when he was a young man, and that was basically because his father could not hold down a job. He'd been a preacher, he'd been a minister, a postmaster, he'd been a schoolmaster. He did all these different jobs, and when Wright turned about 14 years old, his mother got fed up with that, and she divorced his father. At which point Frank Lincoln Wright, as he was born, changed his name to Frank Lloyd Wright. And that was in order to honor his mother's family, the Lloyd Joneses, which were a force to be reckoned with in that Richland Center, Spring Green area of Wisconsin. They were known as the God Almighty Lloyd Joneses. Lots of preachers in that family, lots of movers and lots of shakers. And they were all from Wales. Wright never graduated from high school. He went to the University of Wisconsin as a special student. He spent a couple of semesters there learning engineering, and when he left, I'm sure he must have thought, I have learned everything these professors have to teach me in 2 short semesters. He was somewhat arrogant. even back then. As a matter of fact, he said, early on, I had to decide between honest arrogance and hypocritical humility. I chose honest arrogance, definitely. So when he leaves the University of Wisconsin, he goes to Chicago and he gets a job with a family friend there. And he spends about 6 months there learning how to be a draftsman. And then he gets a job with the most prestigious firm at the turn of the last century, which is Adler and Sullivan. And Louis Sullivan is known as the father of the skyscraper. And you may not know this, but here in West Lafayette, we have a Louis Sullivan bank building. It's one of his 8 jewel box banks, and it's the smallest one and the least expensive one, but it's still pretty doggone special. Wright works for Sullivan for about 6 years, during which time he gets married, and they have lots of children very quickly. And Wright always needs money. And it doesn't help that he had a philosophy that says, if you take care of the luxuries, the necessities will follow. Yeah, I'll let that soak in for a minute. So in other words, he would buy a baby grand piano before he would pay the milk bill. Yeah, people up there in Wisconsin, some of them still don't like him, definitely. I've lost my train of thought. So Wright gets married. He marries a woman with money that he borrowed from Louis Sullivan, and they have lots of children very quickly. Like I said, Wright always needs money. Oh, Heather. So Wright starts doing designs for his neighbors in the Oak Park area where his home was. And when Sullivan finds out about it, of course, he has to fire him because all the work is supposed to come through the firm. Well, Wright isn't the least bit bothered by this. He just builds a studio right next there in his home, which is why it's called the Home and Studio, and hangs out his shingle and becomes an architect all on his own. And everything goes great until 1909, when there was a scandal, and Wright leaves the country and he goes to Europe, and he spends a couple of years in Europe, and he comes back to the Oak Park area, and nobody wants anything to do with him. He doesn't know, nobody wants any of his work, and nobody wants anything to do with him. So then he goes to Chicago, thinking that might be far enough away. Well, it wasn't. So then he goes to back to his ancestors' land, the Spring Green area of Wisconsin, and he builds a home there, and he calls it Taliesin. And Taliesin is Welsh for shining brow. So he's still trying to appeal to all these rather wealthy relatives. So Wright waits for business to come in, and no business comes in. So he does whatever he can to keep body and soul together. So he goes on the lecture series. He writes magazine articles. He draws magazine covers. And at one point, Wright was one of the largest collectors of Japanese woodblock prints in the country. So he's busy doing all these things. Finally, in 1932, his third wife, Govana, suggested that he open up a school of architecture and that maybe people would pay him to learn how to be an architect. Well, that's what he does. And that very first year, about 23 people pay him $750 a year in the middle of the Great Depression to learn how to be an architect from Frank Lloyd Wright. Yeah, so that keeps body and soul together. And finally, in 1936, Wright is challenged by a newspaper reporter from Madison, Wisconsin, to design a small home for him for $5,000. So Wright does the design, and the home is built, and it comes in at $5,500, which is the least amount of money that Wright ever went over in his entire career. Because the next year, he builds a little weekend retreat for a family in Pennsylvania known as Falling Water. That one was supposed to cost $50,000. It wound up costing $175,000. Yikes. Well, that puts Wright back on top. Everybody wants a Frank Lloyd Wright design, and he is in business again. Oh, too far, sorry. Okay, so this home that Wright designed for the Christian family is a Usonian design, and that stands for the United States of North America. Wright wanted a unique architecture, not whatever washed stuff from the old shores like Gothic or Italianate or Victorian. He hated all those. He also designs these from natures with natural material. Our materials are brick, concrete, wood, glass. They're also smaller and therefore supposedly more affordable. They're supposed to be for the middle class. Ours is 2,200 square feet. This is Dr. Christian and his wife, Catherine Christian Spooner. They both worked at Purdue University. Dr. Christian was a professor in the School of Pharmacy, and Kay, as they called her, came to the university as the social director for the union there. The university was overwhelmed with young single men, and this is because the war has ended and these young men are going back to school on the GI Bill. And they have overwhelmed the university with their numbers. And so they don't have enough activities for these young men to keep them out of trouble. So they hire Kay Spooner to come up with more productive activities for these young men to do. So Kay sets up a committee, and Dr. Christian's dean puts him on that committee. Well, he meets Kay and Kay meets him, and it's love at first sight. And they're married that very same year, 1948. And when they got together, they talked about what they wanted out of their married lives. And one of the things that kept rising to the top was that they wanted to entertain faculty and staff and students in their home. They wanted to have what was known as salons back in the 50s. So they knew they needed an architect. And they started looking around, and they didn't find anybody locally or even in Chicago. So Dr. Christian went to a conference in New York City, and Mrs. Christian heard about a community in Pleasantville, New York called Usonian. And she visited there, and she found out that Wright had designed the community, but he'd also designed 3 of the homes there. And she happened to visit one, and she loved it. She loved it so much, she went and got Dr. Christian, drugged him back, and he loved it too. So they decided, well, we'll just get this Frank Lloyd Wright guy, whoever that is, to be our architect, right? No big deal. But being the academics that they both were, they started doing a little research, and they realized that this may not be so easy after all, because the 1950s is the busiest decade of Frank Lloyd Wright's almost 72-year career. He is busy designing all the great big civic designs like the Guggenheim Museum in New York City, things like the Price Tower in Bartlesville, Oklahoma, his only skyscraper, things like the Marin County Civic Center in San Rafael, California. That one looks like a spaceship. Lots of sci-fi movies have been filmed there, definitely. So they get really frustrated, don't know what they can do. And then finally, one day, Dr. Christian just picked up the phone and called Taliesin in Spring Green, Wisconsin. And guess who answered the phone? Frank Lloyd Wright. They had a lovely conversation, and that conversation ended with an invitation to come and visit Mr. Wright, which they did a couple of weeks later, at which point they found out how lucky they were that Wright had answered the phone. Because had any of the other people that were supposed to answer the phone, they would have said, you are crazy. There's no way Wright has time to design a small home for you. Where? West Lafayette, Indiana. Who ever heard of that, right? But fortunately, that was not the case. That first meeting was just a get-to-know-you meeting. Not much happened, but Wright sent them off with an assignment. He said, come back and tell me what you need in your home. Not what you want. That's a very different question, right? And so Mrs. Christian was a very detailed woman, and she prepared a 26-page typewritten document entitled, What We Need for How We Live. Okay, this is them at the wedding. Sorry. Dr. Christian in New York talking. I forgot to forward some. This is the Sol Friedman house they saw in Pleasantville, New York that made him decide to get Wright. All right, here it is. What we need for how we live. And in it, she had a photograph of Dr. Christian and a biography, a photograph of herself and a biography, and a photograph of their daughter, Linda, who was only 14 months old and didn't have much of a biography then. The Christians worked with Mr. Wright over a 5-year period to design their home. They were newlyweds and they didn't have any money, so they couldn't really afford to build the house. But that gave them this opportunity to really get to know Wright and to really come to respect him and he to respect them. One of the things that Mrs. Christian said in this book that I thought was so telling was, we want a home and a surrounding to have a future, one that will grow with us. And so they did. They had an agreement with Wright that they could add his detailed plans as they lived in the home. So for instance, the copper fascia you see around the roof line here, that didn't come on until 1991. It took that long to be able to afford the copper and that long to find somebody to manufacture it. Dr. Christian actually was at a conference with Eric Lloyd Jones, who had just done all brass. And so he told him where to go to get the copper done. So that was very, very nice. The dining room set didn't come in until 1989. The Christians had a, at the time, the carpenter looked at the plans and he said, I can't do that. That's too complicated for me. So the Christian said, fine, set those furniture plans aside, went to the furniture store and bought furniture that Wright had designed for anyone, that anyone could have gone to the furniture store and bought. Unfortunately, nobody did, so they quit making it after about 2 years, but it was made by Heritage Henredon and it was commercially processed. And that's what they used until 1989 when they could get somebody to design this for them. So the name Samara is a botanical term. It comes from the word that means winged seed. Winged seed. So like I said, it's a botanical term. And what it is the seeds, like the maple seed that helicopters around. Wright knew that inside pine cones were also little seeds that helicopter as well. So he did an abstract motif for the house and put it all over the house. It's in our perforated boards, it's in our rug, it's in our furniture, it's in the back of the dining room chairs, it's everywhere. So I'm going to try to show you this. This is a winged seed in motion, okay? Okay, so Wright sees that winged seed spinning around and he does an artistic abstraction of what he sees, and that's what this is. This is the winged seeds in motion. That's what he saw. And that becomes the motif for our house. All right, construction began on April 1st, 1955. They moved in on September 7th, 1956. This is Ed Kipta. He is one of Wright's apprentices. He was actually living in West Lafayette for 8 of the critical months of construction. And he was also a mason, as you can see, and he did a lot of the brickwork. No copper fascia here, not very much in the way of vegetation either, huh? So the Usonian homes are built on a grid, and the grid determines everything about the house. For instance, there's the hollyhock house, the honeycomb house out in California. It's built on a hexagon. And it has really weird angles, and we're built on a 4-foot square. So we have nothing but 90-degree angles in this house. There's one in Marion, Indiana that's built on a diamond shape. And it has, 60-degree angles and 120-degree angles, very different from us, very different. And you can see the grid is actually scored into the concrete here, and that's a good 4-foot square right there. See, this is also that motif here. This goes from larger to smaller, indicating motion. This is early Samara. This is about 1956. At one of the meetings Mrs. Christian had with Mr. Wright, she told him, I would like a brighter palette than what you typically use. And he got huffy with her. But fortunately, Govana was in the room, and so she had just remade herself into an interior decorator. And she said, Frank, I'll work with Mrs. Christian on that. So they worked together with 2 of Wright's apprentices, John DeCoven Hill and Cornelia Brearley, and came up with this original color scheme, which in this photograph, it looks really beige, but there is lots and lots of turquoise running in the fabric. There's also lots of turquoise as accents, and then the carpet was an off-white. I'm sure that drove Mrs. Christian crazy, and by 1974 she was ready for a new design. As you can see, these colors are very 50s, 60s colors. The 70s roll around, and our colors are avocado green and harvest gold, which is what you'll see reflected in our house now. This is another of the more turquoisey looking photographs. All right, so the Christians get their plans on New Year's Day, 1955, at Taliesin West in Scottsdale, Arizona. And Mrs. Christian takes along an autobiography of Frank Lloyd Wright and asks him to sign it. And Wright looks at it, and he takes the book and he looks at it and he goes, why does everybody want these autographs? I never ask anybody for any autographs. So then he looks at the book and he sees this page right here and he says, this is a useless page. This is not necessary. I don't know why the editors put that in there. And he grabs it and he tears it out and he throws it in the garbage can. Well, you can imagine he has got their attention, definitely. So then he takes the book and he signs it in the red square here. He says, to the Christians, New Year's Day, Taliesin, 1955, Frank Lloyd Wright. Well, Mrs. Christian, when she recovers, says, Mr. Wright, would you please give me back that piece of paper you tore out? And he said, of course I will. And he gives it back to her. And then everything goes fine. Well, about, I want to say 25 years ago, Dr. Christian was at the Getty Museum in LA getting the correspondence that he didn't have, that he was missing. And he was waiting for his appointment to start, and he looked at the bookshelves and he noticed that there was one of Wright's autobiographies up there. And he picked it up and he opened it up, and sure enough, that first page was torn out. So he had done it to somebody else as well. They just didn't ask for the page back. All right, here's another little story. So Mrs. Christian had a cocktail party one night, and she invited a whole bunch of people, and amongst the people were President Hovde, who was retired from Purdue University, and her roommate from Okemos, Michigan, who owned the Frank Lloyd Wright house up there. Dolores Edwards was her name. His name was James, I think. And so she invited them amongst other people, and she took this copper pot here. It didn't have plants in it at that time, and she moved it in. She took all the little tables that are in front of the sofa, and she moved them all around so people would have places to put their drink and their food. And she took this copper pot and she moved it in front of the sofa, and she filled it with water, and she put fish in it. So it was a moving centerpiece. Pretty cool, huh? Well, the Hovdes come in, and Mrs. Hovde doesn't see too well, nor did she hear very well. And she goes down the steps and she sits on the sofa there, and then she puts her purse on what she thinks is a glass-covered coffee table. Well, her purse is swimming with the fishes, definitely. Yep, so Mrs. Christian, who has every edition of Emily Post etiquette books on the bookshelves, was mortified, as you can well imagine. And so they fished her purse out. It was a canvas purse. It had nothing but a lipstick in it. So everything went great. It wound up not being a big problem at all, but I just love that story. All right, this is what the house looked like in 1956. And this is what it looks like now. Dr. Christian would always say it's amazing how much you can get done a couple of hours every weekend over 50 years. All right, these are the colors we have now. Here are the perforated boards up here that have that Samara motif in it. You might be able to see a little better there. Here's the Samara rug that has the motif in it. Here's a table, a TV tray here that has the motif in it as well. You can see it in these lamps. These are Taliesin lamps. Wright specified 5 of these because they go with that, the motif. You can see the wing seats spinning around those lamps. I'm sure there's other things here. And these are the tables, the triangle tables that Mrs. Christian moved out and moved all around, hassocks. The living room is set up to handle 50 people. One of the meetings, Wright asked him, well, how many people do you want to sit in your living room? And that was something that they hadn't really thought about. And so off the top of his cuff, Dr. Christian just said 50. And that's what he did. And so let me see if I can get to the other side. All right, we have this long built-in banquette here, and the banquette turns the corner. We have the overstuffed chairs and sofas. We have 12 of these hassocks. Okay, and these tables can come apart and become seats as well. But the really smart thing he did was to lower the floor. So the steps can become seats as well. And because we have the gravity radiant heat in the floor, even in the wintertime, that's a wonderful place to sit. Here's the entry foyer today. Here it was back in the 50s. This is Linda Christian Davis, their daughter, and this is Mrs. Christian. I love how a better look at the copper fascia, but I love how he frames the garden with the carport. I just think that is spectacular. And we have a dragon as well. We also have Solari bells. More of the copper fascia. The dimensional aspect of the copper is also the motif for the house. Okay, we have house tours, arboretum tours, exhibits. We don't have the book anymore. We do have a documentary and some archives. In 2015, we became a National Historic Landmark, which is the highest designation conferred by the National Park Service on places of extraordinary national significance. So we're super excited about that. And the mission is, of course, mainly to preserve, protect, and maintain the physical and architectural and historic integrity of the home, and to make it available to visitors, and to also educate people about Frank Lloyd Wright and his contributions to Indiana and American architecture. All right. In 2018, Linda Christian Davis, who owned the home at the time, Dr. Christian's daughter, turned the house over to the Johnny Christian Family Memorial Trust, which is held and co-stewarded by Indiana Landmarks, which is the largest historic preservation organization in the country. We always say thank you, Eli Lilly, for that, definitely. All right, so this is something that the Foundation and Unity Temple and the Conservancy have put together. This Thursday, we're going to be doing a live Facebook event with the Laurent House in Rockford, Illinois. And we're going to be comparing how the client drove the design there. And in the Laurent House, that was designed for, that was Wright's first and only, I think, ADA home for a man who was in a wheelchair. And ours, because we had such a long period that we worked with him, they were able to influence Wright a great deal. So I hope you will check it in. It's on Thursday at 1 p.m. Eastern time on Facebook. It'll be on my page and it'll also be on the Laurent page. All right, that's it. Thank you. Gosh, that went super fast, guys.
Thank you, Linda.
That was super fast. Thank you.
Well, I'm glad you promoted the Wright virtual visit.
Yes.
For those who don't like to use Facebook, you can actually go to the Frank Lloyd Wright Building Conservancy's website to see these later after they've been done. They're archived there, savewright.org. And that's a treasure trove, because if you weren't aware, these Wright virtual visits have been going on since, what, April?
Yes.
Since we went into quarantine. And so there's 2 phases, as Linda mentioned. You'll see some pieces that were just done individually by sites, and now there's this new section that's all kind of comparison based. I did one a couple of weeks ago with Hollyhock House, and so it's really fun to take a look.
Which was great, by the way.
Thanks for bringing that up, and thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much. I'm going to take a look at our questions here and see if I can lob anything at you. I have a question about, could you repeat the name of the apprentice at Taliesin who supervised construction at Samara?
Absolutely. John DeCoven Hill and Cornelia Brearley, those 2.
Sure. Okay, Christine says, in the living room, I noticed the brickwork does not appear to have been raked out horizontally and filled in with red mortar vertically like many other Usonians. The outdoor brick I see through the living room window seems to have it done this way. So do you know why this typical Wright treatment of the brick was not done inside?
I do know, and it wasn't done outside either. So Dr. Christian was a chemist, and he questioned the integrity of the mortar over time if you add that foreign element to it, and Wright defaulted to him. Now, I know this is unheard of, but that's what happened. And of course, though, Wright had to have the last word. So he sent Dr. Christian a can of red paint, and he said, you paint all those vertical lines inside and out. I mean, horizontal lines inside and out. And Dr. Christian would always say, that's next summer's project. Next summer never comes, right? Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, and he was right, actually. I think that the Roby house had to tuck point everything because it caused it to deteriorate. But mortar's going to deteriorate anyway, so who knows? Yeah.
Okay, interesting. Good eye, by the way, to
Yeah.
Christine. She's very observant. Does Linda Christian Davis still live in the West Lafayette area?
No, she lives in Houston, Texas. When she left Purdue University after earning a couple of degrees there, she went to work as an intern at ExxonMobil, and she worked her way up to a vice president. So she spent her whole career in Louisiana or Texas, Houston, Texas, and she's in Houston, Texas now.
Is she also a chemist?
She has a degree in bionucleonics, which is what Dr. Christian was doing, which is really early pharmacy, nuclear pharmacy. Yeah.
Great. Stan Eklund says, great job. Can't wait to visit again. Maybe you know Stan.
Oh, thank you, Stan. That's high praise.
Sarah asks, any pictures of the kitchen, bedrooms, baths? What about the overall layout?
Okay. I'm going to have to hunt.
See if there's anything else in the meantime here.
Okay. Let's see. Looking. I know I have old kitchen pictures. I should organize these better, shouldn't I? I thought there was one of the back bedroom. Ah, yes. Okay, how do I share my screen? Getting there.
Take your time.
Nope, there. There. Okay, so this is the back guest bedroom, okay? There is a door here, French doors here, and then there's a door that opens up here, but it's screened as well, and the screen doesn't move. So this is an origami chair, Taliesin West, 1938. This is one from Midway Gardens, 1914. The desk here is cantilevered, and there's a cutout back here that you can't see, but it's so that those draperies hang properly. Those are Frank Lloyd Wright design fabrics. Heaven forbid they be bunched up back there, right? We notice also that he moved the drawers over here. So this makes the desk a dresser desk now. Now I have some place to put my t-shirts and socks as well as my laptop, which is pretty cool. Notice the shelving here that is cantilevered as well, and it goes over the mirror. Can you tell that even? The reason for that is so we can see those figurines on 3 different sides. So again, we get that sense of motion back in the back bedroom. The lamp that's there is a signed Handel lamp. It was given to Mrs. Christian by her great aunt Nell before they were even married. And when they got together, they went through their stuff and they said, you know, this doesn't fit into our lives. So they packed it up and they put it away. Well, about 35 years ago, Dr. Christian was up in an auction of Wright items in Chicago, and a lamp like that sold for $15,000. Well, it got his attention. He came home, he pulled his out. Sure enough, it's a signed Handel lamp. He stuck it there. He said, you know, that looks pretty doggone good. And it does, it has the colors of the room. It brings in that nature theme, right, which is so popular with Wright. Let me see if I can get to the next one. Can I just click on this and go there? No, of course not. Okay, wait a second.
I can answer for you, Linda, because we were talking about it earlier.
Yes.
There's a question about whether the Samara house is open right now. It is not, and perhaps you don't have a date in mind.
Nope.
Okay.
We do not. We do not. All right, I'm not finding anything else in that batch. Let me see. Like, will you go away?
Well, I've got another good question for you when you're ready.
I'm ready.
And I know that you have an answer for this one. The question is, was there a space for a television in the living room?
Yes, there was. Yes.
I have to wonder if this person might know the answer to this.
I'm wondering if they do too, yeah. So at one of the meetings they had with Mr. Wright, he asked them, do you own a television set? And this is something the Christians, I mean, this is the early 1950s and not very many people own television sets. So Dr. Christian said, no, we don't own a TV set. We're saving our money to build the house, and Wright liked that. He was glad to hear that. He said, well, you will have a television set. He said, as a matter of fact, you'll have 2 or 3. Now, to the Christian's mind, this was crazy talk. What in the world would you do with 3 television sets? There were only 3 channels back then, right? I mean, would you have 1 television set here on 1 channel, 1 television set here on another channel? I mean, that would just be chaos, right? Well, there are 3 television sets in the house as predicted. There's one in the master bedroom, and there's one in the nursery. And there's one in the living room as well. And if I can find a picture of it, I'll show it to you. I know there's one at the fireplace. Ah, let's see. This is showing, okay, this will maybe do. Maybe this will do. No, why does this keep coming back? Okay, let's try this one. This area right over here has a TV that actually pops up. It's on a remote control, and you push the button and the TV comes out of the cabinet. I love this picture because I call it inside out, because I can see what's outside inside. It seems like it's inside. Does that make sense? This is the supports for the trellis on the terrace, and it's actually outside. Pretty cool.
So we're seeing a reflection of maybe a mitered window there?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And the grate is cantilevered. There's a great story about the grate. They just moved in. They were only there maybe 2 weeks, and there was a knock on the door about 10 o'clock at night, and they were, oh, what's this? And they went to the door, and it was a couple, and they said that they were apprentices from Taliesin, and they had just gotten married, and that she had done the drawing for the grate and wanted to see it in place. And notice I said she did the drawing, not the design. We all know who did the design. And so she wanted to come in and see what it looked like in place. And so they let them come in, and they were actually on their honeymoon, heading down to South Indiana to go honeymoon, which, yeah, maybe to West Bend, who knows?
Oftentimes people will ask at Princess Wright sites, do they use the fireplace? Is that a fireplace that was used by the Christians?
Oh yes, all the time. Every Sunday, they would get out their TV trays and sit in front of the television and watch Lawrence Welk or whatever and eat their beans and weenies that they had cooked over the fire.
Very 50s.
I'm surprised they didn't have TV tray, TV dinners.
Were the Christians the only owners of the home?
One family, that's it. We are so fortunate to have had as much time with Dr. Christian as we did, because these stories I'm telling are ones that I got directly from him, and a lot of places don't have that. And so we're very, very fortunate. It really brings the place to life.
We had a suggestion from an attendee that there should be a webinar comparing Samara to the Rosenbaum house.
Oh, that would be ideal.
Have you been to that house? I have not.
I have not. It's way off the beaten path, and I just haven't had a reason to go down there, but I'd love to. Yeah. Well, we're doing the Laurent house, which is also.
Yeah, that'll be a good comparison.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Here's a question from Nicholas. He wonders, have new technologies been incorporated in preservation efforts which don't necessarily follow the preservation guidelines? He says he's thinking of roof or windows for energy efficiency.
No. And we're a National Historic Landmark, so we have to follow the Secretary of the Interior's guidelines. And so I don't think we would ever do anything like that. But we did just recently get 3D scanned. The whole house inside and out was 3D scanned. And we also had a ground penetration radar done on the terrace to find out what it is that's causing it to drop down. And so both of those efforts were very successful and should be very helpful to the contractors when we get started with the renovations. Which maybe I should mention something.
Maybe you should.
Maybe I should. So we just were awarded a Save America's Treasures grant by the National Park Service for $500,000. I just love saying that, $500,000. I mean, we are so fortunate to help us with our renovations. We are having some problems with the terrace. There's a downspout that's on that corner that has caused the sand and gravel that was underneath the concrete there to wash away, and has caused that terrace to drop. And then the lanai wall has separated from the house, and that has to be taken down and repaired as well. So we are super excited. We hired Gunny Harbo as our architect, and if you know who he is, he's pretty special. So we're feeling like we're in really good hands.
That's wonderful. Yeah. Just received news of that last week.
Yes. And the press release went out today, and been inundated.
A couple more questions for you. As curator, do you live in the house, or is
no.
it a museum house?
No, I don't live in it. I'm there every day. I check on it every day. I spend time there. I'm in the process. There's a bunch of stuff that was left by Dr. Christian and his daughter Linda, and I'm in the process of going through all that and inventory and all that. And I do it until I, get cross-eyed, and then I stop. But yeah, so I'm in the process of doing all that.
Several questions about that apprentice that you named, so that's great, or the two that you named. Great job, Linda, from a fellow University of Illinois alum. Hi, Greg. He asks, does Samara follow all of the Usonian principles?
Yes. Okay, open to nature, natural materials.
Did it come in, do you have any sense of if it came in at budget or?
I know what Dr. Christian told me he thinks it cost. And whenever anyone would ask him that, he would always say, I have a stack of bills back there in the office, which you were welcome to go add up, just don't tell me, okay? And so he told me he thought it was $35,000 in 1956.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, which seems like it's really reasonable. And Wright, of course, took a flat 10% of that. So $3,500. Now that's for the design of the home, the interior design, and the landscape design as well, everything. Now, you take that $35,000 in 1956 and put it in today's dollars, that's about $308,000. So it's still not exactly middle class, you know, affordable architecture, definitely. But because the Christians did it over time, they were able, you know, to make it more affordable for them. Definitely.
Oh, okay, thank you. Clarification about this, who some of the workers were on site. So John DeCoven Hill and Cornelia Brierly were apprentices, but who was the mason? Did you name a mason?
His name was Ed Kipta.
Okay.
Okay, and William Wes Peters would also, he had property in Evansville, Indiana, and so he would, yeah, he would often stop at Samara during construction, both coming and going. So he was often on site as well, as was John Howe.
Great.
And another guy named Carl Book. And well, you know, I think they were just all so excited about, you know, a new Usonian going up. And Dr. Christian did a video of the construction and he narrates it, which is, I should put that up somewhere so people can see it because it's really interesting.
Sure. Did Frank Lloyd Wright and old Govana ever visit the Christiansens at the home once it was completed?
No, they didn't. As a matter of fact, Wright gave a speech in Indianapolis about 2 or 3 years before he died. And Mrs. Christian heard about it. And so she wrote him a note and she said, you know, Mr. Wright, it's only 65 miles, you know, don't you want to come and see your home? Because they were always his homes, right? Yeah. And so he wrote her back and he said, oh, Mrs. Christian, I'm just so sorry. I just don't have time. And then he said, but I don't need to see your house. I know what your house looks like. And he did, because he'd walked through those rooms in his brain all that time he was working on it. Yeah.
Are there any particular times of the day or year when the sun comes through the cutout pattern in the clearest story windows producing a shadow?
Yes, it's Groundhog Day, early in the morning, and we call it eye candy, and it comes through those, the Samara motif starts over on the wall by the banquet, it goes all the way across, all past the fireplace, and all the way over into the dining room. It takes about an hour and a half. It's absolutely fabulous.
Right.
What if I have some pictures? Well, I'm not going to do that. It takes me too long to find these pictures.
Someone asked about the size of the kitchen.
It's quite small.
It shocks her that they could entertain 50 people with the size of that kitchen.
Well, she did it. You know, it's pretty admirable, that's for sure. But what if I have some slides here. Let's see if I can find that old.
And it's kind of an additional question from another attendee. Is it as small as Jacob's One? Have you seen Jacob's One kitchen?
Yes, I have. It's about the size of Jacob's One, and then on the other side of it, we have what he called a utility room. And so that's where the washer, the dryer, the furnace for the radiant heat, the hot water heater, and the laundry, you know, all that kind of stuff is. So it seems bigger that way, you know, but the actual kitchen part is pretty small. Yeah, but it has that 3-point thing, you know, from the sink to the refrigerator to the stove kind of, so it works out that way really good. And she did all her own catering until late in her life. And then she had a big event for Indiana Landmarks, and they had it catered out that time. But, yeah. Yeah, she was pretty amazing. She made all her Christmas decorations.
Wow.
Her signature dish was something called a lunar orbiter, which was 2 cocktail glasses nested together and a shrimp cocktail. And then in the bottom glass, she would put dry ice.
Mm.
That's
Again,
perfect.
super good. So John has shared a YouTube link where you can see the TV pop up out of the
Excellent. Great.
John,
I can play the.
I'm going to break the chat function rule here because others can't see this link, I don't think. John, if you're still with us, if you could go to the chat function and pop it in there, or maybe I can do that. How about that? That way we can have people find the link.
Yeah, we can play it here too. Why don't you just play it?
Oh, that might be beyond my capabilities. Oh, somebody's commenting that Gunny Harbo did a great job at Unity Temple. He's the preservationist there, so.
He's been fabulous. We just can't thank him enough.
Okay, I'm going to put this in our chat. See if I can't. There we go. So people can go to the chat function to find this YouTube link.
Let's see if I can just play it.
Okay, you're braver than I am.
Let's stop.
And Linda, the time of the TV on the video is at 6 minutes, 20 seconds.
Wait, I can't even find where it is.
Oh.
Ah. Hold on. All right. Let me go back here. Come on. I can't get the Zoom to come back up. Oh.
I can see your screen, but I'm not sure if that's broadcasting to everybody. Sorry, I don't know how to advise you on that.
I know. Okay, sharing screen. Okay, this is what I want to. Wonder if I make it full screen. I'm sharing my screen, but why is it not being seen?
Now we can see the screen of the video.
You can?
We can, yes. Well, I can. If you are in the audience, maybe let us know if you can see it.
Can they see it?
Checking the Q&A. Yes, people are responding they can see it, so that's great. And John's advice was at 6 minutes, 20 seconds is the TV.
You want me to go that far, or do you
what we're all apparently, you know, this is what we're tuning in for here. So
do you want to watch this or go forward?
Go forward. I'd love to see if what John is referring to here, if you would. But clearly people know now that they can go back and watch a video on YouTube.
Yeah.
That's Dr. Christian, I presume.
It is.
Is he referring to the motion of the television as it rises out of the casing? There we go.
That's probably true.
Got some nice visuals here.
Really?
Was this a piece done during your time, Linda?
This was just done by a college student.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious where we are in the timing.
In the living room.
Oh, there we go. I think I'll go to our questions, knowing people can go back and view this.
Yes. On their own.
And just see if there's anything else left unanswered here. Has central air conditioning been installed?
Yes, that came in about 10 years after they moved in. They couldn't afford it at first, but Wright knew that they would want it. And he allowed it. He provided all the ductwork to be put in when the house was built. And so all they had to do was plug up the compressor outside and they were good to go.
Good question here of the context of the neighborhood and how the house is sited on the land.
Okay, we are sited east, southeast. Okay, so the front door is actually due south, but you know, Wright does that path of discovery, and so you know, it's not directly anywhere you would see it. You have to look around for the front door, as always. But it faces due south. We are about 40 degrees off of true east-west, because Wright wanted to be able to take advantage of the passive solar in the wintertime. So the sun comes through those perforated boards and helps heat it in the wintertime. And then in the summertime, we have like 8-foot, 6-foot overhangs, which help block it in the summertime too. It is on a hill and it is nestled into the hill. There's a 14-foot drop from the top part of our driveway down to the bottom part of our driveway, what we call the valley. And so that's quite a change in elevation. Yeah, and makes for some interesting winter drives.
For sure. Jane says, sorry, my audio might be a little.
No, you're fine.
Okay.
To me.
Jane says, not a question, but just to say how much I enjoyed my visit there. She felt like your honored guest, not just a tourist, which is
that's so sweet. Thank you.
Nice endorsement for your tours.
Thank you.
Is the house approachable if you drive by, viewable from the street?
No, not at all. We're at a dead end, okay, first of all. And then there's the brick driveway that goes up to the top. And then we're covered with vegetation everywhere. So if you wanted to see the house, you would need to park down at the dead end and then walk up the driveway, and you could look around there.
There's a question.
The people we got on here, 88. Don't all go tramping through the garden, okay?
I'll take care of this question about the building Wright design that looked like a spaceship. You had said that was Marin County in your mind that looked like. There's just a nice comment that maybe we can end on. A beautiful comment below the YouTube video says, Frank Lloyd Wright may have been the greatest architect in the world, but to my mind, the Christians' exceptional stewardship of this structure is the truly remarkable story in this mini documentary.
Oh,
Great architects need great clients, and Frank Lloyd Wright was in a way very fortunate to have been pursued by these people. Very well said.
I say, fabulous. Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a
It
great,
was really nice to see him again, too.
yeah.
Yeah. Miss him.
So I'm quite sure that if you miss the link here that you could, which is in the chat screen, but you could go and you know, YouTube search Samara House and would find that. It's about a 10-minute video, it looked like.
Yep, yep. And I was the one who worked the remote on that shoot, so just saying.
Well, great. You've got many compliments here. And Linda, I just want to thank you again. This was wonderful.
Thank you so much. This was so much fun.
And we want to thank everybody for attending today. This is the way that we can see these buildings right now. And it's such a pleasure to have the visuals on screen. And, you know, it's kind of fulfilling our need to, you know, get
Our
that.
strong need.
So just a reminder again that Linda and a representative of the Laurent House in Rockford will be doing Wright virtual visits Facebook. So go to either one of those sites' Facebook pages to view the video. And that will be 12 Central, 1 Eastern.
Right.
Correct?
Right.
Okay.
And they last about maybe 30 minutes, something like that. Yeah. Yeah. Very reasonable.
Yeah, yeah.
Should be
So
fun.
again, thank you so much. And
Thank you.
thank you to our attendees who once again are always engaged, always lots of thoughtful questions. If you've just tuned in and you missed the beginning, we will have a recording of this up on our website in a few days, mononaterrace.com/webinars, and you should find it there. And you'll be getting that follow-up email in the next day or so asking you for any feedback. So we appreciate that. And
Yes.
We'll say goodbye. Take
Bye.
care, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, Linda. Congratulations again on your grant.
Yes. Woo. Thanks.